Greetings, comrades, and welcome to the Eastern Border. I'm edgy, angry, and tired, which means it's time for some real hardcore journalism. Gonzo, of course. This time, I would actually want you to turn your volume louder and pay attention. This time, I want you to feel things and only then to put your thinking caps on and maybe make some conclusions by the end. Do some good. Be a nice person. This is something that I would like to actually for you to share around with people who haven't listened to the show. Because, oh boy, for this script, I channeled the truth, and the truth was raw and unfiltered. You see, especially those of you who are listening to this for the first time, welcome to modern Russia, a land where the law died quietly in a ditch years ago, probably near Vladivostok, possibly of a heroin overdose. And nobody even stopped to bury the corpse because no one cared, really. Anastasia Kashavarova, a Z-Vatnik scumbag who used to be a personal assistant for Ramzan Kadyrov, calls this legal nihilism. That's the polite term that she uses. The less polite one is state-sponsored anarchy, but with medals. See, here's the deal. Under the benevolent gaze of Vladimir Putin, Russia has discovered a new branch of capitalism. Crime is a public service. Amazing. Why just rob people when you can rob people and get a uniform? In this wonderful, beautiful system, you can steal 300 million rubles, kill a few citizens, maybe some more, maybe even sell state secrets to whoever is paying this week, and then, just before the law catches you, sign up for the special military operation. Suddenly, you're not a criminal, you're a patriot. Note the difference. Kashavarova, the scumbag that she is, lays it out like an accountant of madness. Hundreds of cases where fraudsters, murderers, and assorted low-life opportunists have skipped trial by volunteering for war. All it takes is a signature and a handshake with a corrupt investigator, maybe a few million rubles changing hands, and off they go to the front. Or more often, behind the front, where it's safer and where their crimes vanish in the smoke of bureaucratic amnesia. See, we're not talking about the average Zeks, the prison population. Oh no. We're talking about people whom, by all means, should have discovered open window policy of the FSB much sooner. Everyone can get out these days from anything. See, take the study of Alexei Albin. Vintage 1984, like a good year, I presume, promptly described by Orwell, where he didn't even know how true he would become. See, he's a lieutenant of the Russian armed forces, professional con artist too. He stole millions from wounded soldiers under the guise of investments. Then he disappeared into the glorious chaos of the special military operation. 50 proven thefts. No trial, no punishment. No money returned. Just a uniform, a gun, and probably a medal waiting somewhere in the mail. The investigative committee? Prosecutor's office? The FSB? Oh, no. They're all blind. They're busy stealing on their own. The man defrauds his comrades in arms and ends up sitting in the rear with benefits, awards, and state protection. In the new Russian moral order, that's called career advancement. Kashavarova, in a rare moment of actual optimism, which is pretty scarce for Z-Vatniks these days, offers a modest proposal. See, maybe criminals shouldn't get a free pass to the army before trial. Maybe they should pay some restitution. Maybe violent offenders who have raped and killed people shouldn't be pardoned mid-crime. I mean, it's almost cute, this hope. She still has someone. It's like planting 10 little daisies on a battlefield, jumping around. Kind of like this Pepsi ad, which happened during the protests, Just give them a Pepsi, it's going to be fine. No, it won't. And we all know that. And I still, honestly, don't know why Kashavarov and others of the Z-Vatnik alignment, why they haven't really understood that this is the real Russia. You see, in Putin's Russia, law isn't an institution, it's a loyalty program. Break it enough and it rewards you with promotions, and then they're shocked about it somehow. Shocked that, in their criminal-run country, which is barely a country at this point, with their lack of actual constitution and anything sane going on, turns out people who steal from this very country should be punished. Who knew? That's extremism, comrades. See, while we're doing all this stuff, and while you know this if you're listening to the show, at the same time, meanwhile, I would like to say, in the shining cathedrals of the Western think tanks, analysts sing hymns about the Russian military learning massive lessons. massive fucking lessons. Where? Dara Massacott of Carnegie writes that Moscow has adapted, modernized, and evolved. She might as well have said that the bear has learned ballet and no longer shits in the woods or something. You can almost hear the brass band in the Kremlin swelling with pride. The general staff must have printed out her article and framed it in gold somewhere. According to this Western gospel, Russia is now a lean, battle-hardened war machine that has absorbed the lessons of the early blunders. Except there's like one tiny little problem, which I'd like to point out here, and why I'm making this the way I am. See, every Russian soldier with a Telegram account says it's bullshit. It's complete fucking nonsense. Makes no sense. Where do they get these data? I don't know. And someone's going to quote her and use her as a source and presume that everything's fine. This is what you get when you deal with the official sources where everything is just daisies and sunshines and rainbows. A land of pink ponies, they call it. For 4 years, the people actually fighting have been screaming into the digital void that the system is not learning anything. It's unteachable. It's the king in real time. The only adaptation is improvisation. We're fighting war with duct tape now. MacGyver warfare, except, shittier, and often with no food or no water. The soldiers don't evolve through training or doctrine. They evolve, through blatant degeneration. Here I want to show you an example. You see, Z channels continue to reflect on the new challenges of war. This time the bastards, the author of the channel Witnesses of Bayraktar, asks his listeners in a stunning tone and in confusion whether it's time to start developing dry rations for the military that could be conveniently dropped by drone. And, he's sort of surprised when the author of another channel, Voyenkor Astrakhan, or War Corps from Astrakhan, responds that in the spiritless and evil West, this issue actually has been resolved. Let me actually give you a proper quote here. Quote, "Today, too often, soldiers are sent to the front lines and supplying them by land becomes impossible. Neither buggies, motorcycles, not even robotic carts can deliver food, water, and batteries to the soldiers. But even such difficulties are not a reason to retreat from their positions. Supplies are entrusted to drones, Mavics, FPVs, and other birds to drop food and medicine to the front lines. The Russian Baba Yaga is found on the front lines in homeopathic doses, so we do not take her into account. Since more and more points on the map have to be supplied this way, we need standardized solutions. It is best to use Sapper FPV drones with drop capabilities, which can carry PTMs behind enemy lines. They will undoubtedly reach our positions. And of course, we need to develop a new diet for airdrops from drones. You can't just drop standard rations with a Mavic, so the guys send chocolate bars and nuts. It's hard to find such products in the army, so they have to buy them with their own money. Canned meat is too heavy, so such canned food is not in demand. It would be nice to develop a diet based on freeze-dried meals. They weigh little, are high in calories, and don't upset the stomach, like chocolate does. I will say again that there are more and more places on the front that are simply impossible to reach by land, which means that the relevance of the problem will only grow." And here's a glorious response from Voyenkor Astrakhan. "Oh yeah, I know of such a ration. It's called MRE and is produced in large quantities for the American and several other armies. We do not have it, partly because, as far as I can remember, it was customary to prove the advantages of our dry rations, and quote, the Americans are not ready for a big war at all and can only chase shepherds with their rations. The rations don't even have bacon. So, fortunately, there's no need to develop anything. It's enough to simply copy it, just like the flameless chemical heater. Everything is ready there, we just need to replicate it and make sure that it doesn't turn out to be much more technically complicated than it seems. Surprisingly, the Americans, who did not prepare for the big war and do not have the unique experience that only we and the Ukrainians have, still, somehow, they know how to calculate the weight of dry rations in their damn pounds and actually knew something about logistics." Just to show you that, their army doesn't even provide that to them. Not even water. I was watching on the stream yesterday Yurievich, and he just completely nonchalantly says that, of course, when mobilization finally happens, obviously, no one's gonna basically provide anything. There's gonna be no medical supplies, no training, nothing, and that's the norm. Yeah, what technological advantages? What lessons? They can't even get their own proper med kits. Okay, there is one exception there. The single sort of flickering light in this rusted scrapyard of progress for the Russians is their drone program. Specifically the Gerань drones and Shaheds that terrorized Ukrainian cities and killed civilians. A grim achievement, but, well, a real one, at least. At least they can fly, even if they don't think, although they probably think more than the average officer. But literally everywhere else, besides these super cheap drones that they threaten Europe with and, well, like to aim at supermarkets and schools, is the same tragicomic cycle of fucking failure. Consider the BMD, okay? The BMD is something that people with a military background will definitely understand. It's the Russian airborne combat vehicle. This stuff is supposed to float, supposed to drop from planes, supposed to make heroes of paratroopers. In practice, well, it's a rolling crematorium. Light armor, heavy ammunition, zero chances of survival. Russian soldiers have been burning alive in these tin coffins since 2022 because the vehicle's main selling point, its ability to land and swim, exists only in the twisted, sick fantasies of defense bureaucrats, or probably their BDSM mistresses, which they clearly have, because that's where they spend most of their time in. And the fuckers knew. They knew in April 2022 in Russia that the BMD was a death trap. There's a ton of reports written by engineers, committees had discussed measures to increase protection, all this mess. But reality lost to proud Russian tradition. Nobody cares, and no one wants to care. But you see, you can't armor a myth. The need to keep it light enough to drop outweighed the need to keep its passengers alive, because that was their stated goal, and again, nobody actually cared. So, all these years later, after endless losses, Rostec, that proud temple of Russian industry, announces a grand fucking plan. Unify the BMD and BMP into one super vehicle by 2035. They have 10 more years to reinvent fucking failure. It's the bureaucratic equivalent of promising to fix a sinking ship by repainting the hull. Oh, and they'll do it next decade. And the paint's gonna be stolen too. Out at the front, the soldiers have given up waiting for Rostec's miracles. They've built their own stuff. Cope cages. They also have hanging chains now. They bolt rebar to their tanks. All this mess. Like war priests decorating their idols. It looks really something like from Mad Max. The real innovation in the Russian army doesn't happen in laboratories. It's not organized. It happens in their frontline garages in single units. These are muddy sanctuaries where these Orthodox Stalinism soldiers perform necromancy on Soviet scrap metal, basically. They wrap their BMDs in logs and rubber sheets. They mount smoke bombs with duct tape. They strap instant noodles to armor plates for extra spirit. It's absurd, it's brilliant, and it's all they got for survival. Somewhere in the archives of the site RIA Novosti, there is probably a photograph of a BMP-1 turret grafted onto a Moskvich, a Frankenstein's monster of war that creatively still breathes under the suffocating blanket of official stupidity. And what does Rostec do? It watches, takes notes, and issues press releases about promising new developments. Promising to whom? The crowd circling over burnt-out machinery? Or is it supposed to intimidate us? Well, apparently it does. It's written for these people who say that they're super innovative now. Oh, the joys of just stating things that have no basis in reality. Amazing. See, the experts, the real guys on the ground, people who are fighting this war on the Z side, the fanatics and everyone, the bitter veterans and the cynical bloggers, all these people, they know the truth. They know that the airborne concept is dead. Floating tanks are fairy tales. They know that no BMD has ever been dropped in combat. Yet the myth persists. Because myths, again, are cheaper than armor. And, you can do a lot of graft with a simple myth. In the end, this is what adaptation looks like in the Russian war machine. Soldiers turning their vehicles into metal porcupines, while officials draft PowerPoints about lessons learned. The generals will keep asking about modernization. The politicians will keep quoting Western think tanks that still believe in miracles. And the soldiers, the bloody bastards in the field, and they'll keep burning, drowning, or both. Because the BMDs still float, they still land, and when they're hit by drones, they burn just beautifully. But let's get back to that supposed shining light. The drones, really. See, When Russia invaded Ukraine, its soldiers still thought drones were something teenagers crashed into trees. By the end of the first year, they were praying to them. Now the country treats drones like new saints, worshipped, mass-produced, and completely misunderstood. Factories multiply faster than propaganda memes. Schools open drone clubs. Kids learn to pilot quadcopters before they can spell democracy. If you could even do that, or would spell that, because democracy is something that the evil West does. There's even a national Dronica festival, part trade fair, part techno-religious revival, part Zedvatnik communal gathering, where fat men in their 50s in camouflage and politicians in denial congratulate each other on reinventing the concept of flight. Dmitry Rogozin turns up to preach about innovation, as if, duct taping explosives to a toy copter was a miracle of modern engineering. But still, if it works, it works. Officially, this here part is the Russia's best hope, new industrial renaissance. They are still horribly behind Ukraine, Prime Minister Mishustin brags that UAV production has tripled. There are nearly 900 drone-making companies, he says. Half of them working out of garages or whole chicken coops. Children in Perm build killer drones between math lessons. Students in Alabuga assemble geraniums that train down in Ukrainian cities and kill other students just like themselves. Everyone gets to feel useful in the national hallucination of some fascist greatness. Behind these triumphal headlines, though, lies the same old Soviet joke. The civilian market is a corpse nobody bothers to bury, yet again. They have a lot of unburied corpses there in Russia. Even private company survives by making war toys. The dream of pizza delivery drones died the moment someone realized the army actually pays. Developers talk about innovation, but what they really mean is, not starving. The state promised mountains of gold to UAV manufacturers. What it delivered were mountains of paperwork. Civilian drone budgets are shrinking. Even the Ministry of Emergent Situations is having its wings clipped. Without subsidies, no one can afford to make anything that doesn't explode. Building a drone for firefighting costs as much as a car. Building one for killing costs less and earns you a medal. Now, I used the Versk investigation for this, because they made a great one here, and every engineer Versk interviewed repeats the same story. We wanted to build tools, the system forced us to build weapons. Civilian drones require certifications so complex, they might as well be for passenger jets. 2 years, 10 million rubles, and a prayer to obtain a single permit. And that's if you're lucky, which you very rarely are if you haven't bribed the right person. One company bragged that it got theirs cheap at under 10 million. Patriotism doesn't come free in Russia, even though, everyone's super supportive of the war, as Putin says. The Ministry of Defense naturally certifies civilian drones. To spray crops, you need permission from the same people who, want to bomb everyone. Glorious. So the real development, what they have, happens off the books with these very same Zedvatniks that I've been quoting here and that we're all interested in. Because those are the real soldiers. The same guys who weld together Franken drones in basements. Garage engineers swap Chinese batteries for Russian ones that cost 5 times more and perform half as well. Everyone depends on Chinese parts, but the Kremlin still calls it technological sovereignty. Oh, and let me remind you about the massive lines of over 1,000 trucks stuck in Kazakhstan or in Russian customs, because they can't even get those parts at the moment. Yeah, what a well-run army. On the front lines, drone operators run what they call the People's Military-Industrial Complex. It's basically Etsy with grenades, volunteers, smugglers, small workshops producing whatever the ministry forgot to, and lots of scammers. Loads and loads of scammers. They weld launchers, hack firmware, scavenge wrecked Mavics from no man's land. One Ukrainian drone was reportedly shot down 5 times, repaired 5 times, and is still flying under a new flag, because they just don't have any of their own. Official units get 2 to 3 new drones a month. The media units and elite detachments get piles of them that are never used. Everyone else begs or borrows. Oh, and the media units, of course, sell theirs on the black market that goes to China, sometimes even to Ukraine. It's just all bizarre and weird. But no one's bothering as usual. Some even steal parts from neighboring units. One soldier joked that on the front line, Mavic is worth more than morphine. Yet, despite all of this, The propaganda insists Russia has achieved drone parity. In truth, it has achieved drone piracy, a chaotic ecosystem where the state leeches off its own volunteers to those that they haven't put in prison yet. The developers themselves have made peace with it. Sure, I make weapons, says one engineer. Someone has to. I help my people kill their enemies. Ethics are for countries that can afford them, apparently. And if your enemies are Ukrainian civilians, then I don't really feel sorry for you. And what's going to happen after this war? Well, they shrug. Maybe they'll sell it to friendly states, like, I don't know, Taliban in Afghanistan, or Kim, or whomever. Maybe to anyone with cash. The Papuans will always fight, says one Moscow developer. Another predicts the next war will simply be somewhere else. Everyone knows that all this is going to go to the organized crime as well. Those who dream of peace propose modest alternatives. Drone delivery in mountains and islands, firefighting drones that drop extinguisher balls onto burning cars, surveillance drones for prisons. But even those glimmers are fading. The Ministry of Emergency Situations, well, they have cut their drone funding almost in half. Well, because they have money shortages, just like everywhere else, and Evita Nobel still keeps the base interest rate extremely high. Without war, this whole industry will collapse under its own paperwork, and we're going to have even more economical problems. Experts warn that the ex-soldiers trained as pilots will most certainly drift into crime. And that's just not me. That's basically everyone around these parts at this point. Me included, but I've been talking about this for a while already. They're going to use their machines for smuggling, arson, or worse. Reminder, we already have had one actual assassination with an FPV drone. Russia's next organized crime wave will not wear tracksuits. They're going to have nice Sky Zone goggles, and they'll know how to solder. Already, drones have been used for Bitcoin extortion, signal jamming, murder plots. Same creativity that kept soldiers alive now fuels the underworld. Just like, again, it was both in Afghanistan and Chechnya. Now, the Russian state could fix this if it was an actual state and even slightly competent and would actually genuinely care. They could regulate drones, register them, deregulate civilian use, invest in peaceful tech, but that would require something that the Russian system, led by Putin and built for all these 25 years, simply cannot do, and they cannot tolerate. You know, this would mean that they would have to have some future that is not built on fear and war and conquest of other places, because, oh boy, what is this? People are going to do something civilian. So the drones will keep flying, powered by ingenuity, desperation, and nihilism, because nothing will ever change. Some will scout for targets, others will film weddings. Same hands, same country. Forever stuck in this creation-destruction loop, but they can't get off of their asses and just overthrow this one bastard. In the end, the drone industry is the perfect metaphor for Russia itself. Born from improvisation, sustained by corruption, terrified of peace, and fully impoverished. They can make it all fly. Same with the country as with the drones. They just never learned where and how to land. And that is when it all starts to circle back. From the browsing of the drones to the silence of prisons. Because once you've taught a country to turn engineers into bomb makers and volunteers into smugglers, what do you do with them when the shooting stops? The answer is obvious. Nothing. You let them rot in the same cages you built for everyone else who believe too much. Oh, except if you're a lieutenant who does horrible crimes and then you go to the front lines. The average prisoners, they have figured out something. Here we turn back to Igor Girkin. Amazing. Girkin always appears in these episodes because I like him. To those of you who don't know, he's a professional soldier, part-time Cassandra, full-time inmate of his own disillusionment. Reports from a prison that even convicts have stopped signing for the Grand Patriotic Carnival. Imagine that. You offer a murderer a free pardon and a gun, and at this point, he might actually say no. Now, isn't that weird? Here, I think it's time for some proper quotes. Quote, "Separately, of course, I would like to dwell on the situation with the recruitment of volunteers for the special military operation, which is being actively discussed on the internet in connection with the statements made by blogger Kartavichin, the full text of whose publications was kindly sent to me, that is Igor Girkin. Just today we had another visit from recruiters, which he puts in air quotes, from the Ministry of Defense, who blatantly lied that they were recruiting not for the assault troops, but for the rear and support units. So in our unit, in our cell block, no one enlisted. In other units, the situation is the same or very close to it. That is, even convicts who are in very difficult circumstances do not want to go to the military. First of all, because of the general absolute distrust of the authorities who approach them through these recruiters. We have plenty of 337s. That's a criminal code article. We have plenty of those here, each of whom can tell a lot and does tell about how, many times, etc. the Ministry of Defense has deceived him and his comrades. Not all of them, of course, but most of the stories, in my opinion and assessment, are wholly or partially true. A disrespectful attitude towards soldiers as a renewable, cheap resource, or just meat, is a characteristic feature of the activities of the command at almost all levels, from the battalion commander and above. At the same time, many will go, and are ready to go, as they say, when mobilization begins, when everyone else goes. And they are even ready to fight. Well, at least so they say. But none of them want to voluntarily go to their deaths. All the other factors mentioned by Kartavichin are also valid. The lack of clarity about the goals of the war, the lousy, based on the experience and those who have fought, sometimes for a very long time, the lousy supply, lack of support, lack of armaments, lack of literally everything. Most importantly, lack of equality in hardship and deprivation between the fighting ordinary workers. I would just say that the local serfs. But, then there's also these children of officials living in luxury in the rear. And the demand for justice is also there, but complete distrust of the military authorities and the lack of understanding of the war's objectives. Those are the key points. If there is no mobilization, about which there are persistent rumors among convicts, then, very soon, in fact already now, there will be no one to replenish the active army. That's Igor Girkin for you. Now, let me remind you that these are guys from Ministry of Defense who promise all this stuff. And, well, obviously, prisoners are not dumb. They don't trust them because, as we all know, the Russian war machine doesn't run on fuel or ammunition anymore, or drones. They can't produce that stuff. It runs on lies per minute. Heck, they might even beat out such glorious people like Alex Jones or Andrew Tate here on that stuff. How their trust has decomposed faster than the unburied meat. It's just that this is their new national anthem, the Article 337. That, by the way, is absent without leave. Everyone hums it under their breath. The commanders treat their men like they're infinitely replaceable, like bullets you can stamp out by the ton. The front line has become just a tragic theater where the script never changes. Commanders bark, men vanish, medals get printed, and somewhere in the rear, a general receives a new apartment, or some scumbag gets away by paying off things and going to the war without any criminal punishment, but not the actual prisoners. It's a cycle of institutional cannibalism, and every order smells taintly of smoke and rot and filth. That is how they operated, and this is where they've come today. The rot of the system itself has just gone way, way too far. And then finally, comes Chadayev, the political scientist with a drone controller, and, presumably, as he calls it, conscience, scribbling his bleak notes about the system. He doesn't even bother capitalizing war anymore, just calls it the situation, because that's what the Kremlin has turned it into. Not a crusade, not even a cause, just a situation. It was a fascist crusade a couple of months ago, now all that's gone too. It's just a plumbing that you can never fix, just like the ones in Moscow. Yeah, they should prepare for new ruptured pipes. Back in 2022, this guy, he saw it coming. He knew the Russian state couldn't win, not because the army was weak, but because the system itself is allergic to change. It's like a snake that has forgotten how to shed its skin. See, in normal countries, crises create reforms. In Russia, crises create opportunities for theft and committees of more theft. Every disaster gets a PowerPoint presentation and a new deputy minister, who gets a new little mansion and more embezzlement. The only thing that's actually mobilized there is basically paperwork at this point. Chadayev writes that the system's stability depends on permanent demobilization. Keep everyone asleep, politically sedated. Elections should feel like choosing between a polling station and a barbecue. You want the people passive, drunk, and vaguely patriotic, but not really thinking about this. Not armed with opinions. The moment citizens start caring, the whole illusion of Russia being an actual state just starts to wobble. And yet somehow the system is not just trying to survive its own war, which it got stuck into. Now, it can't win. It just refuses to die. It's like a molten nuclear bunker because no one knows what to do. Now, 40 years into the carnage, Russia floats in a surreal calm. The war drones on, but the society has learned to tune it out. The TV shows pretty maps, the Telegram channels scream, and the average citizen just turns up the music. The new normal, Chadaev calls it. Prigozhin's rebellion has been catalogued as a historical curiosity, like a meteor strike. Strelkov sits in jail, safely neutralized. The army mutinies have been paved over. Volunteer networks have eaten themselves. No innovation, no technology. Utter stagnation, just like with everything else. What's left? Bureaucratic entropy? A vast machine that hums along, directionless but steady. The missiles keep flying, the factories keep stealing, and the ministry keeps issuing optimistic communiques about stabilization. The people, meanwhile, talk about the war the way they talk about weather. Did you hear about the drone strikes? Yeah, but the rent's up again, and this time skiing's going to be rough. The absurdity has settled in like a permanent fog. Reality has been nationalized. And so the circus rolls on. Western experts write more analyses about Russia's resilience. The Kremlin quotes them proudly, proof that the empire still has mystique, with all that Stalin and all that whatnot. The soldiers keep welding rebar to their tanks, still pretending it's innovation. The generals keep collecting medals for surviving another year of their own incompetence by just sending one meat assault after another. This is not how innovation and learning from your mistakes looks like. Somewhere, in an office lit by the grey glow of dying fluorescent bulbs, a clerk is stamping papers to declare victory inevitable. As soon as 2035, perhaps, when the unified airborne infantry swimming flying vehicle that's also a drone is finally ready to explode on schedule. Back on the ground, in the modern ruins, the only modernization happening is, human. The soldiers adapt by lowering expectations. They stop believing in command, in justice, and rescue. They learn to fix, to hide, to curse quietly, and, join militias organized by Girkin. That's the final irony of the Russian special military operation. It has produced no heroes, no innovations, no glory. Only survivors who have become actually a bit too competent at surviving. In the end, Russia's war isn't about territory or ideology. It's about inertia. A great machine grinding forward because it's forgotten how to stop. Every report, every statistic, every photo of a burned-out BMD is just another entry in the gospel of decline. And yet beneath the noise, one thing remains brutally clear here. The system that Putin has built for 25 years, learns nothing, can't learn nothing, because learning would require memory, and memory would force it, to admit it's made mistakes. So it builds new tanks that can float but can't fight, recruits criminals who can kill but can't obey, invents a future that looks suspiciously like the past and with the gulags and everything. The state marches on, dragging its citizens through another decade of patriotic exhaustion. The slogans change, uniforms get redesigned, but the truth stays the same. The Russian Empire burns slowly, efficiently, bureaucratically, and the smoke's the progress, Picture it, a government built from the bones of its own history, embalmed in ceremony and televised denial. A state that clings to its myths like a drowning man, clutching metals instead of air. Russia. Russia, presumably eternal, indestructible, absurd. Finite, about to collapse in a civil war, and farcical. These guys, they like to call it stability. I call it taxidermy. The generals sit in their offices polishing their strategies, shiny as tin, hollow as hope. They talk about the future of warfare, about innovation, about synergy between the military and industry. Meanwhile, the Russian soldier in the mud is welding his grandmother's iron bed frame onto a tank so that it doesn't get eaten alive by drones. There's your synergy. Every empire in history eventually reaches that perfect moment when it forgets what it's for. Rome had bred its circuses. The Soviets had slogans and cues. Modern Russia has Telegram channels and excuses. I mean, this is evil taken to routine levels. This is totalitarianism tired of itself. The real tragedy isn't that the machine kills people. All war machines do that. The tragedy is that at this point, it doesn't even remember why it kills them. Putin doesn't know how to exit the war, so the system just goes on. Everyone on the Russian opposition also states that this war is bad for Russia, and it is, because it will collapse at the end, and Putin has caused this. But they can't stop. It's a reflex now. Bureaucratic violence and an autopilot, hoping to achieve something one day. You can walk through the ruins of this war, the BMD husks, the empty promises, the stolen billions, feel the ghost of an idea that once called itself a country. It still flies a flag, still technically is an anthem, melody is off key, the constitution doesn't work. It's as if the nation itself has been lobotomized, still walking, talking, but incapable of any self-awareness. And the world watches, half horrified, half hypnotized. Western experts keep writing essays about Russian adaptability, as if decay was a design philosophy. They mistake the twitching parts for actual life. Meanwhile, inside the collapsing colossus, the few who can still think, the few soldiers, a couple of writers, cynics, whistleblowers, they keep screaming into the static because nothing's going to change. They're not trying to save the system anymore. They're just trying to document the absurdity before it buries them completely. Some of them, like Kalashnikov or Yuri Yevich, they still have passion. No one else does. That's the report from this infernal newsroom. The new Putin's empire. Year 4 of its self-afflicted nightmare. Tanks still float. Drones still fall. The dead still don't get counted. And somewhere out there, in a bunker lined with gold leaf and paranoia, a certain midget of a president is still saying, everything is going according to plan. Amazing. And that's going to be it for today. Hopefully understand why I was so angry today, and that you could actually share this with someone that you care about. That would be nice. If you want to support the show, please, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/theeasternborder. You can go to theeasternborder.lv, click the donate button there, or click the pinned post to get to our merch store. Or just, email me at theeasternborder@gmail.com. Many ways how to reach out. You can also join our Discord. I exist here because of you guys, and I try to bring you what's real. And if you appreciate my work, well, please consider throwing your Witcher a tiny bit of coin. That would be nice. And thanks to everyone who did it, because I was in a bit of trouble, but you guys really saved me. You made sure that I'll be able to fix my stuff and get my bills in order. It's great. Also, Evita did a reading of a fairy tale in the stream. She got much more secure, so that's coming too. Hopefully, we all get to see how this whole mess ends. It's not going to be easy for me. It's going to be another period of anxiety and horror after this, but at least this historical period, well, I would say it's over already. Like I said back in the episode 299, just a zombie walking. No innovation expected. До свидания, товарищи. And as always, remember, happiness is mandatory.